He let the alien girl stay just one night, and that was all it took for her to get pregnant. The rain hammered against the reinforced plasteel walls of Curtis Grant's refuge pod like 1,000 tiny fists demanding entry. Through the transparent ceiling panels, purple lightning illuminated the alien jungle's canopy in brief, violent bursts. The pod, a 30-foot-tall cylinder with a diameter of 15 feet, stood resolute against the tempest on its hydraulic stilts, keeping it safely above the rising floodwaters. Curtis watched the deluge from his comfortable position in his favorite synth leather chair, bare chest still gleaming with sweat from his evening workout. At 42, he kept himself in peak condition, a necessity for any human choosing to live on the frontier world of Proxima 7. His muscular frame and rugged features, complemented by his short-cropped brown hair and thick beard, had earned him more than a few appreciative glances from both human and alien females during his supply runs to the trading post. "Computer status report," he commanded, taking a sip from his whiskey glass. "External temperature, 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Humidity, 98%. Water level has risen 2.3 feet in the past hour. Current elevation above flood level, 8.7 feet. Pod integrity at 100%. He nodded satisfied. The pod might not be luxurious, but it was built to withstand anything this savage world could throw at it. As a freelance xenobiologist specializing in studying the local flora, he'd chosen this location specifically for its proximity to some of the rarest specimens in known space. The unexpected knock nearly made him drop his glass. Curtis froze, eyes narrowing. In 3 years of living here, he'd never had an unannounced visitor, especially not during a storm of this magnitude. His hand instinctively moved to the pulse pistol on his hip as he approached the airlock. The external camera revealed a sight that made his breath catch. Standing on his entry platform was quite possibly the most striking alien female he'd ever encountered. Her orange skin seemed to glow in the storm's darkness, and her purple dreadlock-like hair was plastered to her face and shoulders by the rain. She wore a black bodysuit that left little to the imagination, with strategic cutouts revealing more of that fascinating orange skin. She was also shivering. "Please," her voice came through the external speaker, managing to sound both melodious and desperate. "My shelter? The flood?" Curtis hesitated only a moment before disengaging the airlock. He wasn't about to leave anyone to drown in this deluge, no matter how suspicious the circumstances might be. The inner door slid open with a soft hiss, and she practically fell inside. Water cascaded from her form, creating a puddle on the metal floor. Up close, she was even more stunning, her large, almond-shaped eyes a mesmerizing shade of gold. "Thank you," she breathed, her universal translator lending a slight exotic accent to her words. "I am Lyuria. My research station was overwhelmed by the floodwaters, and yours was the only other shelter within range of my emergency scanner." Curtis raised an eyebrow. "Another researcher? What's your field?" "Comparative anthropology," she replied, wringing water from her hair. "I've been studying the migration patterns of the indigenous sentient species in this region. Or I was, until my equipment had decided to go for a swim." She attempted a smile, but another shiver interrupted it. "Let's get you warmed up," Curtis said, heading to a storage compartment. "I've got some spare clothes that might fit, though they'll be a bit big." When he turned back with the clothes, he found her watching him with an intensity that sent a jolt through his system. There was something in those golden eyes that spoke of more than simple gratitude. "I'm Curtis Grant, by the way. Xenobiologist." "A pleasure, Curtis Grant," she purred, accepting the clothes. "I hope I'm not imposing too much by asking to stay until the flood recedes." "Not at all," he replied, trying to ignore the way her bodysuit clung to her curves. "Though I should warn you, these storms can last for days." Her lips curved into a smile that made his pulse quicken. "Oh, I'm counting on it." As Lyuria disappeared into the bathroom to change, Curtis tried to get his thoughts in order. Something about her presence was setting off all kinds of alarms in his head. Not necessarily danger warnings, but definitely signals that there was more to the situation than met the eye. He busied himself preparing hot beverages, selecting a mild stimulant that was safe for most humanoid species. When she emerged wearing his oversized shirt and shorts, her orange skin seemed to glow even more vibrantly against the dark fabric. "Your hospitality is most appreciated," she said, accepting the steaming cup. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, and Curtis felt a distinct tingling sensation at the contact, especially given how unexpected my arrival was. "It's nothing," he replied, trying to maintain his professional demeanor despite the way she was looking at him. "There's not much civilization out here. We frontier folks have to look out for each other." Luria took a sip of her drink, her golden eyes never leaving his face. Indeed, though I must admit, I'm surprised to find a human male of your caliber living alone out here. Surely there are more comfortable postings available to someone with your expertise." Curtis shrugged, settling back into his chair while she perched on the edge of his desk. "I prefer the solitude. Easier to focus on my work without the politics and bureaucracy of the research stations. And yet you welcome strange women who appear at your door during storms?" Her tone was playful, but there was something else beneath it, a sort of restless energy that seemed to be building. "Only the interesting ones," he countered with a slight smirk. "Though I have to admit, you're the first." She laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a breeze. "Lucky me." She set down her cup and stretched, the movement causing the oversized shirt to slip off one shoulder. "Though I should confess something." Curtis raised an eyebrow. "Oh, my research station wasn't exactly overwhelmed." She stood, moving toward him with a grace that reminded him of a predatory cat. "I may have deliberately chosen this time to make your acquaintance." "Is that so?" His voice remained steady, but his heart rate increased as she drew closer. "And why would that be?" Luria stopped directly in front of him, her exotic scent, something like cinnamon and starlight, filling his senses. "Because, Curtis Grant, I've been watching you for some time, and I find myself very interested in conducting some intimate cross-species research." Curtis cleared his throat, mentally steeling himself against the intoxicating presence of the alien woman before him. "Luria, while I'm flattered by your interest, I have to maintain professional boundaries. We're both researchers, and are all human males this adorably resistant?" Luria interrupted, perching herself on the edge of his desk again. Her golden eyes sparkled with amusement. "Or is it just you, Curtis Grant?" He shifted in his chair, trying to maintain his composure. "It's not resistance, it's ethics. Professional ethics." "Ah, yes, your human ethics." She smiled, twirling a purple dreadlock around her finger. "Did you know that among my people, the Nixians, it's considered highly unethical to deny natural attraction? We believe suppressing such energy creates negative ripples in the universal consciousness." Curtis couldn't help but chuckle. "That's convenient for your current agenda." "So perhaps," she conceded, stretching languorously. "But it's also true. Tell me, what exactly do you study out here, Curtis?" Primarily the bioluminescent flora of the western jungle region," he replied, grateful for the shift to a professional topic. "There are several species that show remarkable properties. And do you know why they glow?" Luria interrupted again, her voice taking on a scholarly tone that somehow managed to sound seductive. "Well, current theory suggests they're responding to mating signals," she said, sliding off the desk to pace the room. "The entire jungle is one giant reproduction symphony. The plants, the insects, even the air itself is saturated with biological imperatives." She turned to face him, her orange skin seeming to pulse with an inner light. "That's what I've really been studying." Curtis leaned forward, genuinely intrigued. "You're saying the bioluminescence is a response to mating pheromones?" "Among other things." She moved closer, her movements fluid and graceful. "Everything on this world is connected through a complex web of biological signals, including us, right now." "Us?" Curtis raised an eyebrow. "Surely you've noticed the increased ambient glow since I arrived?" She gestured to the transparent ceiling panels where, indeed, the jungle canopy seemed to be pulsing with more intense light than usual, despite the storm. Curtis stood, moving to his research console. "That's fascinating. I've never seen readings like these." He began typing rapidly, pulling up various data streams. The electromagnetic signatures are off the charts. Luria appeared behind him, her breath warm against his neck as she looked over his shoulder. "The plants are responding to my biological state. As I said, I chose this time specifically." "Your biological state?" Curtis tried to focus on the readings, but her proximity was making it difficult. "Nixian females enter a state of heightened awareness and attraction every third lunar cycle," she explained, her voice low and musical. Our bodies produce unique biochemical signatures that affect various life forms around us. It's how we ensure genetic diversity, by attracting potential mates from various species. Curtis turned to face her, maintaining what little professional distance he could in the confined space. That's remarkable from a scientific perspective. But you're worried about taking advantage? She smiled knowingly. Let me be clear, Curtis. I'm in complete control of my faculties. This isn't some mindless biological imperative. I chose you specifically after observing you for several cycles. You've been watching me? Studying you, she corrected. Your dedication to your work, your respect for the environment, your physical fitness regime. Her eyes traveled appreciatively over his bare chest. All quite impressive. Curtis ran a hand through his short hair, trying to process this information. So when you say you want to conduct intimate cross-species research, I mean that I want to explore the possibility of compatibility between our species. Yes. She moved to the center of the room, her presence commanding attention. But more than that, I want to understand you, Curtis Grant. The way you think, the way you feel, the way you maintain such rigid control, even when every cell in your body is screaming for release. The storm outside intensified, lightning casting dramatic shadows through the ceiling panels. The jungle's bioluminescence seemed to pulse in rhythm with the thunder, creating an almost hypnotic effect. The plants, Curtis muttered, glancing at his readings again. They're responding to both of us now. Yes, Lyuria confirmed, satisfaction evident in her voice. Your own biochemistry is shifting, harmonizing with the environment. With me. She approached him again, but didn't touch him. Did you know that humans produce unique pheromones when they're experiencing strong attraction? Ones that can affect certain alien species quite intensely? Curtis swallowed hard. That's not in any xenobiology textbook I've read. Because most humans never leave their comfortable, climate-controlled research stations long enough to truly connect with alien ecosystems. She gestured to the wild jungle beyond the pod's walls. But you've been out here long enough to start changing? To become part of this world's biological symphony? The implications of her words hit him like a physical force. Hey, you're saying I'm adapting? Evolving, she corrected. Becoming something more than just another earthbound human. Something that can truly bridge the gap between species. Her golden eyes seemed to glow in the dim light. That's why I had to meet you, to understand if what I was observing was really possible. Curtis found himself moving toward her, drawn by some force he couldn't quite explain. And what exactly were you observing? The potential for true compatibility. Not just physical, but biological, emotional, spiritual. She reached out, her fingers stopping just short of touching his chest. Do you feel it? The way the very air seems to vibrate between us? He did feel it, a sort of electric tension that made his skin tingle and his heart race. The scientific part of his brain was fascinated by the physiological response, while the rest of him was fighting a losing battle against the urge to close the remaining distance between them. This could compromise both our research, he said, making one last attempt at maintaining professional distance. Lyuria laughed, the sound sending shivers down his spine. Or it could lead to the most important discovery either of us has ever made. She finally touched him, her orange fingers tracing a line across his collarbone. Sometimes the most valuable research comes from being willing to cross boundaries. The contact sent a jolt of electricity through his system, and the bioluminescent flora outside flared in response, bathing the pod in otherworldly light. Fascinating, they both said simultaneously, then laughed, breaking some of the tension. Look, Lyuria said, her expression becoming serious, I understand your hesitation. Human ethical standards are admirable, if sometimes overly rigid. So let me propose something. We approach this systematically, document everything, turn it into a proper research project. Curtis found himself grinning despite his reservations. Are you suggesting we conduct a formal study on cross-species attraction? Why not? Her eyes sparkled with both mischief and intellectual curiosity. We're both scientists. We can maintain professional objectivity while exploring these phenomena. The storm outside had settled into a steady drumbeat against the pod's walls as Curtis and Lyuria set up their impromptu research station. His sophisticated lab equipment, usually reserved for analyzing plant samples, was now being repurposed for a very different kind of study. "Your biochemical readings are extraordinary," Curtis muttered, studying the holographic display hovering above his workstation. "I've never seen anything like this interaction between human and Nixian cellular structures." Lyuria leaned closer, her shoulder brushing against his. "That's because no human Nixian pair has ever been studied during a mating cycle. Most of our interactions with humans are purely diplomatic or commercial. And you chose a reclusive xenobiologist for your groundbreaking research?" Curtis raised an eyebrow, trying to focus on the data rather than the intoxicating scent emanating from her skin. "I chose someone who would understand the significance," she replied, reaching past him to manipulate the holographic display. "Look at these hormone levels. Your body is producing compounds I've never seen in human medical literature." Curtis studied the readings more closely. "That can't be right. These molecular structures, they're almost like they're adapting to match Nixian biochemistry." Lyria's golden eyes sparkled with excitement. "Exactly. Your prolonged exposure to this ecosystem has altered your biology more than you realize. Your cells are displaying remarkable plasticity. That would explain some of the unusual readings I've been getting from my own blood work lately," Curtis mused, pulling up his personal medical files. "I thought my equipment was malfunctioning." "Far from it." Lyria's fingers danced across the holographic interface, overlaying their current readings with his historical data. "You've been gradually changing for months. The real question is, why you specifically?" Curtis ran a hand through his short hair, contemplating. "Could it be related to the bioluminescent flora I've been studying? I've spent more time in direct contact with the native ecosystem than most researchers." "That's part of it," Lyria agreed, pacing the lab area with nervous energy. "But there's something more. Something about your particular genetic makeup?" She trailed off, staring at a new set of readings with wide eyes. "What is it?" "Your DNA structure. It has unusual stability markers. Most humans who undergo environmental adaptation show signs of genetic stress, but yours..." She turned to face him, her expression a mix of awe and excitement. "Your body isn't just adapting, it's thriving on the changes." The implications hit Curtis like a physical force. "Are you saying I'm some kind of genetic anomaly?" "I'm saying you might be the key to something revolutionary." Lyria moved closer, her orange skin seeming to pulse with an inner light. "Do you know how many species in the galaxy are genetically incompatible? How many potential bonds are impossible because of biological barriers?" Curtis felt his pulse quicken as she approached. "And you think studying our compatibility could help change that?" "I think," she said, reaching out to place her hand over his heart, "that what's happening between us could be the beginning of something unprecedented in xenobiology." The moment her hand made contact with his bare chest, the lab equipment erupted with activity. Readings spiked across multiple displays, and the bioluminescent flora outside the pod flared so brightly it was like daylight. "Incredible," Curtis breathed, watching the numbers scroll across the screens. "The biochemical reaction is instantaneous." "And completely natural," Lyria added, her voice soft but intense. "No genetic engineering, no artificial enhancement, just pure biological harmony." Curtis found himself lost in her golden gaze, the scientist in him warring with more primal instincts. "We should document everything. Set up proper protocols. Already done," she interrupted, gesturing to the lab equipment with her free hand while maintaining contact with his chest. "Everything is being recorded and analyzed. Every hormone spike, every cellular interaction, every..." She paused, a mischievous smile playing across her lips. "Physical response." The air between them seemed to crackle with energy. Outside, the storm intensified again, as if nature itself was responding to their growing connection. "You planned this all along, didn't you?" Curtis asked, though there was no accusation in his tone. "I planned to study you," she corrected. "I didn't plan to feel..." She hesitated, searching for the right word. "This level of resonance. Look at the readings, Curtis. Our biochemistries aren't just compatible, they're actively seeking to harmonize." He glanced at the displays, his scientific training allowing him to process what he was seeing despite the distraction of her touch. "These patterns, they're almost like a prelude to conception," Lyria finished, her voice barely above a whisper. "My people have legends about this. about finding genetic matches so perfect that traditional barriers between species become meaningless. But I never thought that you'd find it with a human. That I'd find it at all. Her hand moved from his chest to his face, tracing the line of his jaw through his short beard. This is beyond anything in our scientific literature. The potential implications for interspecies relations. Are we still talking about research? Curtis asked, his voice rough with emotion. Lyria's laugh was like music. We're talking about making history, Curtis Grant. In more ways than one. The lab equipment continued to record unprecedented levels of biochemical activity as they stood there, the air thick with possibility. Outside, the jungle pulsed with light, as if the entire ecosystem was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. You realize, Curtis said, finally allowing himself to reach out and touch her face in return, that if we proceed with this, our search, there's no going back. The scientific community will either celebrate our discovery or condemn us for breaking every protocol in the book, she finished. But isn't that how all great scientific breakthroughs happen? By daring to cross lines others won't? The lab equipment's soft hum provided a counterpoint to the storm outside, as Curtis and Lyria's research took an intimate turn. The pod's environmental controls adjusted automatically, responding to their elevated body temperatures and the increasing bioluminescent activity from the jungle. The readings are off the charts, Curtis murmured, his voice husky as he monitored the holographic displays. Their biochemical synchronization had progressed beyond anything previously documented in xenobiology. Lyria's golden eyes seemed to glow in the dim light. Our bodies are sharing more than just surface reactions now. Look at the cellular resonance patterns. The displays showed an intricate dance of molecules, human and Nixian biochemistry interweaving in ways that defied conventional science. Their proximity alone was causing unprecedented reactions in both their bodies. It's like our DNA is reaching out to each other, Curtis observed, fascinated, despite the growing intensity between them. I've never seen anything like this level of biological compatibility. Among my people, there are ancient stories, Lyria said, her fingers tracing patterns on his arm that left trails of tingling energy. Tales of perfect matches that transcend species barriers. They're considered myths, but now, the lab equipment chimed, drawing their attention to new data streams. Their biochemical markers were aligning in perfect harmony, creating something entirely new. Your human physiology, Lyria breathed, studying the readings, it's not just adapting anymore. It's evolving in real time, and my Nixian biology is responding in kind. Their research notes recorded everything: elevated hormone levels, synchronized biorhythms, the formation of entirely new molecular bonds. The scientific part of Curtis's mind struggled to maintain objectivity as their connection deepened. The storm outside reached a crescendo, lightning illuminating the jungle in stark flashes. The bioluminescent flora pulsed in rhythm with their heartbeats, creating an otherworldly light show that bathed the pod in shifting colors. Hours passed in a blur of sensation and discovery. Every touch, every moment of connection was meticulously documented by the lab equipment, recording what would become the most comprehensive study of human-alien compatibility ever conducted. When morning finally came, the storm had passed, leaving behind a transformed world. The jungle seemed to glow with new life, and the air itself felt charged with possibility. Lyria was the first to notice the changes in her biochemical readings. "Curtis," she called, her voice filled with wonder. "Look at this!" He joined her at the main display, his eyes widening as he processed the data. These patterns, they're consistent with early-stage cellular division, she finished, her hand instinctively moving to her abdomen. It happened. What was thought impossible? The implications hit them both simultaneously. Their night of research had resulted in something unprecedented: successful human Nixian conception. The compatibility wasn't just surface level, Curtis said, running additional scans to confirm what they were seeing. Our genetic structures actually merged and stabilized. Lyria's orange skin seemed to glow with an inner light as she processed the news. My people have never successfully conceived with any other species. The genetic barriers were always too great. Until now, Curtis said softly, pulling up more detailed scans. Look at the cellular structure. It's perfect, stable, a true hybrid incorporating the best aspects of both our species. The lab equipment continued to record everything, documenting what would become a milestone in xenobiology. Their personal experiment had evolved into something far more significant than either of them had anticipated. "We should run more tests," Curtis suggested, his scientific training asserting itself despite the emotional weight of the moment. "Make sure everything is progressing normally." Lyria laughed, the sound full of joy and wonder. "Nothing about this is normal, Curtis. We've just rewritten everything we thought we knew about interspecies compatibility." The morning light streaming through the pod's transparent panels caught the moisture in her eyes, making them sparkle like golden stars. "My people will be amazed. Humans have always fascinated us with their adaptability, but this is beyond anything we imagined possible." Curtis pulled up historical data, comparing it with their current readings. "The changes in my DNA that allowed this, they're permanent. The jungle's influence combined with your presence created something entirely new." "Something beautiful," Lyria added, studying the preliminary scans of the developing cells. "Look at how the genetic structures are integrating. It's perfect." The lab equipment chimed again, completing another series of analyses. The results confirmed what they already knew in their hearts. They had created something unprecedented in the history of both their species. "We should document everything," Curtis said, already thinking like a scientist again. "This could revolutionize our understanding of interspecies relations." "Always the researcher," Lyria teased, but her expression was fond. "Though I suppose that's part of why I chose you. Your dedication to understanding, to pushing boundaries." "Speaking of understanding," Curtis said, pulling up new data streams, "these readings suggest your pregnancy will progress faster than a human one, but slower than a typical Nixian gestation." "A perfect balance," Lyria mused, watching the holographic displays. "Just like everything else about this union." 2 weeks after their fateful night, Curtis stared in amazement at the holographic display showing Lyria's latest medical scan. The progression of her pregnancy defied all conventional understanding of both human and Nixian gestation periods. "The development rate is extraordinary," he murmured, adjusting the imaging parameters. "What typically takes months is happening in weeks." Lyria reclined on the medical examination couch, her orange skin now bearing a subtle, pearlescent glow. Her previously form-fitting bodysuit had been replaced with a flowing garment that adapted to her rapidly changing form. "My people's pregnancies usually last 3 months," she said, watching the holographic image of their developing child with wonder. "Human gestation is 9 months. Yet here we are, somewhere in between but accelerating beyond both norms." Curtis's scientific equipment, originally designed for botanical research, had been repurposed into a sophisticated medical monitoring system. The hybrid cells are demonstrating remarkable efficiency in energy utilization. "It's like they've taken the best aspects of both our species and optimized them." "She's perfect," Lyria whispered, her golden eyes fixed on the scan. "Look at how she's developing. Human resilience combined with Nixian adaptability." "She?" Curtis raised an eyebrow, smiling. "You can tell already." "A mother knows," Lyria replied with a mysterious smile. "Besides, the cellular patterns are consistent with female Nixian development markers." The lab equipment chimed, drawing their attention to new data. Curtis frowned as he studied the readings. "Your metabolic rate is increasing exponentially. We need to adjust your nutrient intake again." "Third time this week," Lyria noted, accepting the specialized supplement drink he handed her. "The baby's energy requirements are substantial." Curtis ran his hand through his short hair, concern evident in his expression. "We need to ensure your body can keep up with the demands. This accelerated development is putting significant stress on your systems." "Worth every moment," Lyria assured him, reaching for his hand. The moment their skin made contact, the bioluminescent floor outside the pod flared brightly, responding to their connection just as it had that first night. "The ecosystem is still highly reactive to us," Curtis observed, making notes on his data pad. "If anything, the sensitivity has increased since the pregnancy began." "It's not just the plants," Lyria added, her free hand resting on her slightly swollen abdomen. "I can feel changes in my own biology. My connection to the environment is becoming more pronounced. It's like the jungle is trying to support us." Curtis pulled up another set of scans, these showing the surrounding ecosystem's activity patterns. "The bioluminescent flora's chemical production has shifted. They're releasing compounds that seem specifically designed to support your pregnancy." A biological support network, Lyria mused, sipping her supplement. The entire ecosystem is adapting to nurture this unprecedented union. The medical scanner beeped, completing another series of tests. Curtis studied the results with growing amazement. The fetal development is perfectly stable despite the acceleration. Every marker indicates optimal health. It's almost as if this was meant to happen, Lyria finished. My people have legends about the first gardens, places where life could be transformed and renewed. I always thought they were myths, but now, you think this jungle might be one of those places? Curtis asked, his scientific curiosity piqued. Think about it, Lyria said, sitting up carefully. The unique bioluminescent flora, the way it affected your DNA over time, how it's supporting our child now. This isn't just a random ecosystem, it's a cradle of evolution. Curtis began cross-referencing their current data with his years of botanical research. That would explain why my original samples showed such unusual properties. The plants here aren't just adapted to their environment, they're actively participating in evolutionary processes. And they chose you, Lyria added softly. All those months of exposure gradually prepared your biology for this moment, for us. The implications were staggering. Their personal miracle might be part of something far larger, a natural process of guided evolution that they had unknowingly tapped into. A sudden flutter of movement from Lyria's abdomen caught them both by surprise. Did you feel that? She gasped, pressing Curtis's hand against her skin. There it was again. A definite movement that shouldn't have been possible so early in a pregnancy. The medical scanner immediately registered the activity, adding new data to their growing collection of unprecedented observations. She's strong, Curtis said, wonder evident in his voice. The hybrid vigor is remarkable. Look at these muscle development readings. She has your strength, Lyria said proudly, combined with Onyxian neural development patterns. The potential ... We need to prepare faster than we thought, Curtis realized, quickly calculating new timelines based on the acceleration rate. At this pace, she could be fully developed in another month. So soon? Lyria's eyes widened, though her expression was more excited than concerned. The real question is whether the pod's facilities will be adequate, Curtis mused, looking around at his converted research station. We may need to consider relocating to a better-equipped facility. No, Lyria said firmly. The jungle is supporting us. Moving away could disrupt the pregnancy's stability. Besides, she added with a sly smile, this is where it all began, where you let a strange alien girl stay for one night. And got more than I bargained for, Curtis finished, returning her smile, though I wouldn't change it for anything. 6 weeks after that stormy night, the jungle surrounding Curtis's research pod erupted in unprecedented bioluminescent activity. The entire ecosystem pulsed with waves of light, as if nature itself was preparing for something extraordinary. The contractions are getting stronger, Lyria breathed, her orange skin radiating an intense glow that matched the forest's display. Her golden eyes shimmered with a mix of excitement and concentration as she lay on the medical bay's birthing couch. Curtis monitored the array of holographic displays, amazed by the readings. Your biochemistry is perfectly synchronized with the jungle's energy patterns. It's like the entire ecosystem is helping with the delivery. The pod's equipment, though not designed for childbirth, had been cleverly modified to support their unique situation. Every surface gleamed with the reflected light from outside, creating an almost ethereal atmosphere. She's ready, Lyria announced, her voice filled with certainty. Our daughter wants to meet this fascinating world. The medical scanners confirmed her assessment, showing the hybrid child in perfect position. The unprecedented speed of the pregnancy had given them barely enough time to prepare, but somehow everything felt right. The cellular stability is remarkable, Curtis noted, studying the latest readings. Complete integration of both genetic structures. She's carrying the best of both our species. A particularly strong contraction caused the nearby bioluminescent plants to flare brilliantly. Through the pod's transparent panels, they could see new specimens sprouting and blooming in real time, as if the jungle was celebrating. The legends were true, Lyria gasped between contractions. The first gardens, they don't just support life, they celebrate it, transform it. Curtis held her hand, marveling at how their skin seemed to glow where they touched. Your people's myths about evolutionary cradles. We didn't just stumble into one. It chose us. The medical equipment chimed urgently, drawing their attention to new data streams. The baby's bioreadings showed an extraordinary combination of human resilience and Nixian adaptability, along with something entirely new. "Look at these neural patterns," Curtis said, his scientific fascination momentarily overriding his emotional state. "She's already showing signs of advanced consciousness. The hybrid synaptic structure is unlike anything in either of our species." "Of course she is." Luria managed a proud smile despite her discomfort. "She's the first of her kind, a bridge between worlds." The jungle's luminescence intensified further, bathing the pod in waves of color that seemed to pulse in rhythm with Lyria's contractions. New plant species were literally evolving outside their walls, responding to the imminent arrival of this unprecedented life. "The ecosystem's reaction is exponential," Curtis observed, watching new readings flood his screens. "It's as if the entire jungle is evolving in response to her imminent arrival." "She's coming," Luria announced, her voice filled with determination. "Our beautiful impossibility." The next few minutes were a blur of activity, both within the pod and throughout the surrounding jungle. The medical systems worked flawlessly, adapting to the unique requirements of this hybrid birth, while the ecosystem outside continued its spectacular light show. And then, suddenly, she was there. Their daughter's first cry was like music, a perfect harmony of human and Nixian vocal patterns that made the bioluminescent flora pulse in response. She was beautiful, a perfect blend of both parents. Her skin was a subtle pearl color with hints of orange undertones that seemed to shift in the light. Wisps of hair, already showing signs of both brown and purple highlights, crowned her delicate head. "She's perfect," Curtis whispered, tears in his eyes as he helped clean and wrap their miracle child. "Absolutely perfect." "Look at her eyes," Luria said softly as their daughter blinked up at them. One eye was a warm brown like Curtis's, the other golden like her mother's, but both held a depth and awareness that seemed beyond normal newborn capability. The medical scanner beeped, completing its initial assessment. "All vital signs are optimal," Curtis reported, his voice thick with emotion. "She's showing unprecedented stability in her hybrid genetics. It's like her DNA was meant to exist exactly this way." "What should we call her?" Luria asked, cradling their daughter close. The baby's skin seemed to glow softly, responding to her mother's touch. Curtis thought for a moment, watching how the jungle's light played across his new family. "Aurora," he suggested, "after the ancient Earth phenomenon of lights in the sky. It seems fitting, given all this." He gestured to the spectacular display outside. "Aurora," Luria tested the name, and their daughter turned her dual-colored eyes toward the sound. "Yes, that's perfect. Our bridge between stars." The medical equipment continued to record everything, documenting this milestone in xenobiology. But for Curtis and Lyria, the scientific significance had become secondary to the pure joy of holding their miracle child. "To think," Lyria mused, "all of this because you let a strange alien girl stay one night during a storm." "Best decision I ever made," Curtis replied, sitting beside them and marveling at how right this felt. "Though I have to admit, I never expected to make scientific history quite like this." "The science is important," Lyria agreed, watching Aurora track the moving lights outside with remarkable focus for a newborn. "But what we've created here is more than just a breakthrough in xenobiology. She's proof that love can transcend every barrier, even the ones we thought were written into our very DNA." 3 months after Aurora's birth, Curtis's research pod had become the center of an unprecedented scientific and diplomatic convergence. Representatives from both human and Nixian scientific communities gathered in a newly constructed facility nearby, while the original pod remained a sanctuary for the remarkable family. "The transformation of the jungle is accelerating," Curtis explained to the assembled delegation, gesturing to the holographic display showing the exponential evolution of the ecosystem. "What we're witnessing isn't just adaptation. It's directed evolution on a scale we've never seen before." Aurora, already displaying the development of a 1-year-old despite her young age, sat in Lyria's lap, her dual-colored eyes tracking the moving lights with extraordinary focus. Her pearl-toned skin with orange undertones seemed to pulse gently in harmony with the jungle's bioluminescence. "The first gardens weren't myths," Lyria addressed the Nixian elders, who regarded her with a mixture of awe and reverence. "They were evolutionary catalysts, waiting for the right combination of species to activate their true potential." The human scientists muttered among themselves, their initial skepticism having given way to wonder as they studied the data. The jungle around them had become a living laboratory of accelerated evolution, producing new species that exhibited traits of both Earth and Nixian biology. Your Union, the head of the Nixian Science Council spoke, his golden eyes fixed on Aurora, has awakened something our ancestors spoke of in their most sacred texts. The convergence, a time when species would transcend their biological barriers and not evolve together. It's more than that, Curtis added, pulling up new data streams. The changes we're seeing aren't random mutations. They're purposeful adaptations, creating bridges between different forms of life. And it all started with one stormy night. Lyria smiled at him across the room, their shared glance speaking volumes about how far they had come from that first meeting. Their initial attraction had blossomed into something that was literally changing the universe's understanding of life itself. The implications for inter-species relations are staggering, the human delegation's leader admitted, studying Aurora's latest medical scans. Your daughter isn't just stable, she's thriving in ways we never thought possible. Her hybrid genetics show none of the issues we've seen in previous attempts at cross-species breeding. Because she wasn't engineered, Lyria explained, stroking Aurora's brown and purple hair. She's the natural result of love finding a way through what we thought were insurmountable barriers. The jungle outside pulsed with new colors as Aurora laughed, her joy somehow connecting with the ecosystem in ways that even the most sophisticated instruments couldn't fully explain. New species of plants sprouted and bloomed in response to her emotions, creating spectacular displays that defied conventional biology. We're recording unprecedented levels of genetic transfer between species, one of the human scientists reported, excitement evident in her voice. The entire ecosystem is sharing and adapting genetic information, creating sustainable hybrid species that shouldn't be possible. The garden is teaching us, Aurora spoke, her first complete sentence stunning the assembled delegates into silence. Her voice carried hints of both human and Nixian tonal qualities, creating a harmony that made the bioluminescent flora pulse brighter. Curtis moved to join his family, placing a protective hand on Lyria's shoulder as their daughter continued to amaze everyone present. She's right, he said. This isn't just about our breakthrough. The jungle, the first garden, is showing us what's possible when we stop seeing differences as barriers. The ancient texts speak of such places, the Nixian elder mused, where life could be renewed and transformed. But they also speak of those chosen to guide such transformations. His gaze settled on Aurora with newfound understanding. The human scientists' instruments chimed with new data as the jungle's evolution continued to accelerate. Species that had remained separate for millions of years began showing signs of beneficial genetic exchange, creating stronger, more adaptable forms of life. Your daughter, the human delegation leader said carefully, she appears to be catalyzing these changes somehow. Her hybrid nature is inspiring similar adaptations throughout the ecosystem. She's a bridge, Lyria said proudly, just like the love that created her. A living proof that barriers exist only in our minds. As if to demonstrate this point, Aurora reached out toward the nearest window, and the bioluminescent plants outside formed patterns that exactly matched her thoughts. Complex mathematical equations that described the very process of evolution they were witnessing. We'll need to establish a permanent research station here, the human scientist declared. With your permission, of course. The potential applications for medicine alone. Under our protection, the Nixian elder added firmly. This place, this family, they're sacred. A living testament to what we can become when we open our hearts to new possibilities. Curtis looked at Lyria, seeing in her golden eyes the same love that had drawn them together that stormy night. We'd be honored to help guide this research, he said, but our daughter's privacy and freedom will be paramount. Of course, both delegations agreed quickly, having seen enough to know that this miracle needed to be protected and nurtured, not exploited. As the delegates continued their discussions, Curtis pulled Lyria and Aurora into a tight embrace. To think, he whispered, all this because I let a beautiful stranger stay one night during a storm. The best decisions, Lyria replied with a knowing smile, are often the ones that seem crazy at the time. She kissed him softly, their connection causing another wave of evolutionary activity in the surrounding jungle. Aurora giggled between them, her dual-colored eyes sparkling with wisdom beyond her weeks. The garden knew, she said simply. It was waiting for hearts brave enough to love, without boundaries. The assembled scientists and diplomats watched in wonder as the family's love literally transformed the world around them, creating new possibilities for all species. Their union, born of one stormy night's passion, had become a beacon of hope for the entire galaxy. Proof that love truly could overcome any barrier, even those written into the very code of life itself.